Have you ever felt like you were destined for greatness, only to find yourself entangled in your own weaknesses? Imagine being the strongest man alive, a hero chosen by God, yet constantly battling your own inner demons. This is the story of Samson, one of the most fascinating and complex characters in the Bible. It's a story of immense strength, deep flaws, and ultimately redemption. And as we journey through Samson's life, you may just find pieces of your own story reflected in his. Samson's story begins long before his mighty feats. It begins with a promise, a divine promise given to a barren woman. The book of Judges, chapter 13, tells us that Israel was in a dark time. The people had once again turned away from God, and they were under the oppressive rule of the Philistines. But God had a plan to deliver them. An angel appeared to Manoah's wife, who had been unable to have children, and said, "You are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. Now see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink, and that you do not eat anything unclean. You will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines." Judges 13, verses 3 through 5. Samson was born with a divine purpose, a miraculous child destined to lead his people to freedom. From birth, he was set apart by God, a Nazirite, bound by vows of purity and devotion. But as we'll see, having a calling doesn't make one immune to temptation and failure. Samson's strength was legendary. In Judges 14, we read that Samson once encountered a young lion. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands as easily as one would tear a young goat. This was just the beginning of his mighty feats. He was a one-man army against the Philistines, causing havoc and destruction wherever he went. In another display of his strength and cunning, Samson captured 300 foxes, tied their tails together in pairs, and fastened a torch to each pair of tails. He then lit the torches and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines, burning up their shocks, standing grain, vineyards, and olive groves. Judges 15, verses 4 through 5. The climax of his strength came when he picked up the fresh jawbone of a donkey and struck down 1,000 Philistines. With his unmatched power, Samson became a living legend, feared by his enemies and celebrated by his people. But for all his physical strength, Samson had a fatal weakness: his uncontrolled desires. Despite his divine calling, Samson often followed his own impulses rather than God's commandments. He was drawn to women who did not share his faith, leading him into relationships that would ultimately bring about his downfall. Samson's most infamous relationship was with Delilah, a woman whose name is synonymous with betrayal. The Philistine rulers approached Delilah, offering her a fortune to discover the secret of Samson's strength. She repeatedly begged Samson to reveal his secret, and though he resisted at first, his love for her clouded his judgment. Samson finally told her, "No razor has ever been used on my head, because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man." Judges 16, verse 17. Delilah wasted no time. As Samson slept, she had his hair cut, and when he awoke, his strength was gone. The Philistines captured him, gouged out his eyes, and took him to Gaza, where they bound him with bronze shackles and set him to grinding grain in prison. In the darkness of his captivity, Samson had time to reflect. His pride had led to his downfall, but God was not finished with him yet. Samson's hair began to grow back, a symbol of his returning strength and God's enduring grace. The Philistines brought Samson out during a festival to mock him in front of a great crowd. But in this moment of deepest humiliation, Samson prayed to the Lord, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Judges 16, verse 28. With renewed strength from God, Samson pushed against the pillars, and the temple collapsed, killing more Philistines in his death than he had during his entire life. It was a final act of deliverance for his people, and a powerful reminder that even in our failures, God's purpose can still be fulfilled. The story of Samson is a story of human frailty and divine strength. It's a reminder that no matter how strong we think we are all vulnerable to temptation and failure. But it's also a story of redemption. God's grace is greater than our weaknesses, and His purposes are greater than our mistakes. You might not have the physical strength of Samson, but God has given you a purpose. And even when you stumble, even when you make mistakes, God's plan for you doesn't end. His grace is always there, waiting to restore you. Samson's life was marked by incredible highs and devastating lows, but in the end, it was marked by God's grace. You too can find strength in God, no matter where you are in life. The same God who gave Samson strength is ready to empower you to overcome your struggles and fulfill your purpose. If you're feeling weak, if you're struggling with your own battles, I encourage you to turn to Jesus. Invite Him into your life. He is the source of true strength, and with Him, you can face any challenge. As Philippians 4, verse 13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the life of Samson. Remember, God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. If this video has touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of faith, hope, and redemption. And if you're ready to invite Jesus into your life, take a moment right now to pray and ask Him to be your strength and your guide.